forward to a wonderful episode. Lots to cover this week. There's been plenty of sport going on.
Plenty of stuff going on. Lots of late nights.
Oh yes, plenty late nights, and also some interesting sport to come over the weekend as well. So there's some big games, and there was also the cricket in the balance, and we've also got the Tour de France going on. So we'll be covering all that off, as well as your normal AFL and NRL sport for this weekend as well. To start off on, I guess, a sad note, I guess a bit of a touchy subject, a bit emotional, particularly for some of us in the room, namely myself. We're going to start with State of Origin. Now, we did make some bold predictions last week. Just going back through them, both of us picked New South Wales.
It's unfortunate.
If only I had sound effects, because that would be a toilet sound right there. We've then got first try scorer. You went with Jennings. Well, he did score a try.
Well, he did get New South Wales' only try, so I was half right, I'd say.
Yeah, well, I'm glad Queensland set him up for that one, because it's an absolute screamer. They pretty much set up technically they set up all the tries for the night, which is a good point for them.
Yeah,
so,
the only real points that New South Wales got was the penalty goal, which was the first points of the match.
Yeah.
So you chose Dugan?
I chose Dugan, who did play valiantly. I think he was one of our better ones in a team that, it's hard to say that there's a better player out there when you're getting beat 52-6, but he was one of the ones that sort of actually still had a go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think he played the best he could, and it's sort of the team around him they weren't there. They never showed up.
No, and then we've got the man of the match, Gallon, who again was probably New South Wales' best forward. And then you had Pearce.
Pearce, who I chose, who looks like he could be in trouble.
He could be.
Again.
Well, yeah, he also copped... he'd be probably wiping the side of his face as well after Jonathan Thurston absolutely gave him a monster spray.
Loved giving it to him.
He put himself in that position though, I guess. He can't come out and call a potential 009.
009, yeah.
Could be the ninth immortal you're looking at right there.
You'd have to think so.
And he's coming out and bagging him, calling him too old. Pearce maybe might want to bite his tongue going forward.
Considering, how many, I don't know, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but Pearce has probably been in about 6 to 8 games.
Yeah. And
has never won a series.
No.
So, for him to come out and, I can understand why. I think it was Laurie Daly who's come out and said to him in the first couple of games, you've got to get in their head, which it did work, but it has ended up backfiring on him.
Absolutely. He's paid the price, but I guess that's all in the name of sport. You've got to put yourself on the line. Then we've got the scores, 20-16 and 26-14. I don't think there was even that many. There was more points scored than that in the total game, let alone the scoreline even being close.
No, that's right.
So what were your thoughts on the game? Where did Queensland win it?
Queensland won. All over the park. They were dominant. You could go from with Slater being out and English just slotting into the spot. He never looked out of place. There's been games before where he's slotted in there and he's sort of looked out of place, but it seemed like he was in fine form.
Yeah, well, I was listening to Cam Smith as well, interviewed, I think it was after the game, and he put a lot of it down to Hodjo and Inglis being on the actual training field, whereas I think in previous camps they've maybe had one session, maybe 2 sessions here or there. Hodjo's sometimes, I think he cut his foot and missed all the Origin 1 warm-up,
yeah.
So I guess that sort of cohesion really looked like it was working for Queensland early on, and obviously proved to be too good for New South Wales going into the game, and obviously the longer the game went on, the better Queensland looked.
Yeah. Just the other thing, one of the other big players that I thought really stood up in the game, he was Josh Papali. He come into the side, come off the bench, and was just absolutely damaging. We'll get to the game last night, but the game last night, he absolutely tore Newcastle apart as well.
Well, it's hard to imagine what could have been. I was calling for him to be called into the first game. Anyway, I thought he should have been at least on the bench. I didn't think he'd warranted to not be selected. I thought he'd put his hand right up. Even game 2, I thought he was there or thereabouts. He should have been probably selected ahead of a few of the others, but he got his cracking going through and really made the most of it. And he made it hard for Mal to obviously leave him out of 2016 team.
Yeah, most certainly.
You couldn't think of a team without Papali in it at the moment. He is really dominating, not only at rep level but also at club level. He's really picked up, and I think under Ricky Stewart, he's lost a bit of kilos.
Yep.
He's got his head back on, switched back on. He's admitted it himself. He put on a few kgs, which weren't helping his game, but Sticky's really got him focused and got him going again. But we'll touch on that a little bit later. New South Wales, where did it go wrong?
Oh, from the kickoff.
Yeah, took the field and that was it.
Like honestly, it was a poor performance just all around the park. Barring Josh Dugan, and that's putting it lightly. That he had a decent game.
Yeah.
But other than that, there was just nothing in it. You had Pearce and Hodgkinson who just did not perform. Once again, it come down to the pressure cooker. And I mean, Hodgkinson was there last year, and he knew what it take to win a match. And I just think Mitchell Pearce has just put himself out of it again by just another poor performance.
It certainly makes it hard to pick him based on that performance. Maybe the only thing that could save him is the fact that he is playing 5'8" at the moment, which isn't his designed position. There's a case to argue that regardless of whether he played half at 5'8", he wasn't there. But again, I think for me personally, I think the New South Wales forwards really just didn't name up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of media. I think I heard in the radio myself this week. Once famous coach, he quoted was saying there's nothing that can weaken a person's mentality than good press. So the good press around New South Wales forwards, the beat up around Clemmer,
all the hype around Clemmer are just, and it's exactly like you said. All the hype around it just made him. It should have really pushed it.
It didn't still them. It softened them. I thought. I think for a player to read too much of their own good press, it doesn't. You lose that motivation. You think you're the man. You think you're the one that's the dominant person. And then Queensland really came out, made a point to aim up. I thought Parker and I thought Matt Scott were really good early on,
yep.
And just really took it to our forwards and made them accountable. And they just buckled. It was as simple as that.
Yeah, you had Slam and Sam Friday as well, or Sam Friday.
Yeah, Sammy Friday.
Or Pammy.
Pammy Friday, as we like to call him on the show.
I think he had a fairly decent game as well. His go forward was it's phenomenal. I'm not a big fan of him, but he can play. And I mean, you got to look at the teams for next year.
I guess looking forward, what changes are you making? We'll start with Queensland. There's probably not too many. You obviously lose Justin Hodges from that.
Yeah, Hodges is gone.
I think you put Chambers probably in it there.
Yep, swap Chambers in and Gagai will keep his spot.
Yeah, it's hard to lose Gagai. I thought he played reasonably well.
I thought he played pretty well.
You've got GI who'll go back to where Chambers played on Wednesday night, and then you've got Billy Slater, if fit, who'll play fullback again.
If fit, he should slide back in.
There's nobody really else knocking on the door to take a centre spot off either of those people or a fullback spot. So GI knows his spot in the team is to play a centre.
Yep.
And obviously he can move. I think Mal will probably have to float him around at fullback a little bit more because he was so good there.
It's just damaging.
Exactly right. The ability to just pop up on an offload or to pop up on the inside or on the outside. Again, I discussed this off air with a few people. The way that GI can just sort of come through the line, and whereas Billy Slater would throw the pass and hit a winger, which is sort of somewhat
ridiculous.
Yeah. GI can throw the dummy and go himself, and he's got that palm which he used on Pearce so well. It's almost undefendable. Whereas if he's one-on-one against Josh Morris can aim up, he can get up off the line, cut his time down on the ball. He doesn't have that ability to be able to get around Morris because he defends him so well. But when he's out at fullback, he's got that extra 5 to 10 metres to play with the ball, to put the defence in two lines, and that's what works so well for him.
Yeah.
Going down the list, Thurston will be there, Cronk will be there.
Other than the starting couple of players that we just talked about, your bench is your only real questionable for some players.
Yeah, I think obviously it would be dependent on form.
Form and injuries, yeah.
Lillyman played a blinder on Wednesday night. Papali, we've already touched on. Gillette did his job. at the end of the day. And Maguire as well could come into calculation. I know he did his knee or his ankle.
Yeah, I think it was his ankle.
His ankle. So that cost him his spot with Papali coming in. It's a little bit tough, but I think Maguire could obviously count himself within the chance. Injuries.
Most certainly. I think he'll decide. I think he'll be the one that'll come straight back in.
Injuries will be the only determining factor, I think, around any changes for Queensland next year. On to New South Wales though, and I think we're both sort of predicting mass changes.
I'm looking at my paper right here, and there's just stuff everywhere.
Yeah, so I guess let's start with the wing. I think probably the Will Hopewadi position. He could probably go.
Yeah, the last 12 months he's dropped his form, and I don't know if it's got anything to do with Parramatta's form or anything like that, but just the fact that they went to him in the first game and he was solid. Same in the second, but the form slump that he's just come down from the last 12 months is just, you'd have to think his performance on Wednesday warrants him to be very, very questionable.
I think he had minus run meters as well, which you can't have. You need a winger who's able to bring the ball back. You've got, Gagai did it, in the previous games, Chambers has done it. Yeah. Just even getting that just over the advantage line, there was none of that there from Hopewadi. Obviously, the Maroons big men aimed up and they were probably aware of what he was going to be doing, and they probably watched a lot of video on game 1 and game 2. Yep. So he made a few more metres there, but you need a powerful runner. Who's replacing him for yourself?
You've got the option of Josh Mansell being fit.
Yep.
He's obviously your obvious choice, but I've got another guy in there, Jack Whiting.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a player that could even get a bench spot. He plays fullback for Canberra. He can slot into the halves or anything like that, but he can play centre as well. He's a very versatile player and can slot in. Yeah.
We skipped over Dugan. I don't think Dugan loses his spot. Well, the only thing, again, injury.
Or Hayne returns.
If Hayne comes back. But I think it's hard to say, well, Moylan and Tedesco are there or thereabouts. It's just a shame that they've got, it seems like New South Wales have got an abundance of fullbacks, but they're not versatile. They can't play a centre. They can't play a wing.
No.
Well, I guess we did play Hayne on wing for a lot of time in New South Wales, so you could almost throw Tedesco on one of the wings.
Yep.
He's got the ability to return the ball so hard,
well,
footwork as well. Moylan, I wouldn't put on a wing. I don't think he'd fit the frame of Will Hopewadi. He'd get dominated in the middle. His run meters wouldn't be as good. He'd be able to pop up on an offload, but I think Tedesco's ability to be able to do that at the moment is far superior compared to Moylan.
Yeah, well, just on Moylan, we'll slot down to the 5'8" just quickly. I've got him as a potential to be in the 5'8" position.
Yeah.
He plays fullback for Penrith, but he has played time in the halves when his halves are out. He's dominating in that sense. There's a couple of options there to slot in there, but if not on a wing position or even a bench spot, him and Jack Whiten are in the same sort of situation, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's 3 fullbacks there that we've mentioned, so Tedesco, Whiten and Moylan. So there's plenty of ability there, but then obviously moving on to the centres, Josh Morris and Jennings, do you see them sticking around?
I'd see them sticking around.
Josh Morris, there's got to be a question mark asked over him. I know he's a good defensive centre, but I just don't know if that's enough to keep a spot, but I guess time will tell. They've done the job. Jennings probably did the number on Hodges in game 2, and it looked like Hodges got some revenge in game 3.
Yeah, definitely.
But I just don't think Jennings even really seen the ball.
No, it was a completely different game to the second game. The ball speed play of New South Wales was just terrible.
Pedestrian.
You could go back and watch the Queensland, and the amount of time that they were down and up within 2-3 seconds was ridiculous. Where you had New South Wales getting worked over, getting rolled over way too easily, and I think that affected it in game 3. Whereas in game 2, they were getting the ball out to Jennings a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So he had that chance to dominate Hodges. Whereas in this situation in the game 3, they just they couldn't go anywhere. Like they couldn't get that ball out at the half. They couldn't get the ball out to Jennings quick enough. So it affected him in that sense.
In a sense, it was sort of what New Zealand did to Australia in the one test earlier this year. Their play the ball speed was far superior.
Yep.
Which is what allowed New Zealand to obviously dominate the Australian team. I thought New South Wales did that in game 2. I thought Queensland was far better at it in game 3, and that really obviously showed towards the back end of the game as well. They were just still so consistently dominant on as far as where they were going with the ball and how quickly they were playing the ball as well. We then move on to I think we'll probably leave the halves till last, but do you see Robbie Farah still being our hooker?
Yeah, I see Farah coming in. Ennis was brought in, and I don't think he's played for a few years now. He was brought in. He's getting on now with his age, and it really showed.
Yeah, I think that's probably the last Origin game McInnes will ever play. He was slow. His first tackle attempts he was always bumped off.
Yeah.
That's not to say he didn't come back.
No,
he
that's
certainly
right.
did. He made the second and third efforts. But I think that's the difference between him and Farah. Farah makes the hits and makes them stick.
Yeah, stops him.
And brings it down and then dominates the tackle as well. The tackles that I've seen that Nick was making in those one-on-ones, the play of the ball was almost
instantaneous.
Nick's still on the ground trying to get up.
Yeah.
And obviously you didn't want to give away penalties.
Looking for his walk in front of him.
I don't know if that's the call, but keep in mind he's playing for the Sharks this weekend, mate.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, see Newcastle last night. But I think that's probably the last game McKennan's play. I know New South Wales had limited options there as far as who they could throw in. Pete's is injured. I don't know if Michael Leiter is New South Wales.
Yeah, he is. He is eligible, but you wouldn't be throwing him into the gauntlet in game 3.
Yeah, but if we're given the same predicament like next year, and we're down on troops, and we've got a bloke that has to make a debut, or you have to pick Mick Ennis because he's got experience, are we going back to Mick Ennis?
Nah, definitely not. Yeah.
Exactly. Our hands are tied. So I thought it got to a position there where our hands could have been tied. We could have not picked Mick Ennis and gone with the debutant, but obviously elected to go a different way. I don't think that made it. It wasn't.
It wasn't the all in all.
But it's a shame that Mick Ennis now has to get associated with that sort of a game. But such is the game that they play.
Yeah, especially in a tough competitor that he is. Like you said, he was there for his tackles, but he's always getting bumped off, and it affected everything.
Yeah, exactly right. We then go on to our front row. So our props were Woods and Tamo. Hard to discount them. I thought Tamo probably gave away a silly penalty when it wasn't necessary.
Oh.
Touch and go. I thought it was low, but that's my opinion.
But it was a decent tackle.
Certainly not biased. But I think they probably Woods definitely gets his spot. Tamo could maybe be moved to a bench spot. Just with maybe Clemmer coming into the starting team, but I'd be tempted just to leave Clemmer on the bench for the time being.
Yeah, I think so.
He's still got to get his stripes as far as playing rep footy.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He doesn't start for the Dogs in and out every week.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still only young. I mean, Des obviously knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He wants to give him the minutes to build him up. He could and that's the thing. He wants him to become a starting prop.
Yeah.
But he's just got to keep building him up, and it'll be the same situation for New South Wales. It'll only benefit them, and Des is doing New South Wales a big favour by doing that.
It's not like Des isn't well trained to bring through forwards. You look at the way he brought King through at Manly, Kite through at Manly. Even you've got the Stewart brothers and Watmo all under his tutelage. So he's able to bring out the best in the forwards. So there's no doubt that he'll do a number on Clemmer. And I think he's just got to make sure he refocused after that Origin performance.
Yeah.
We've then got our second rowers, which in my opinion have got to go.
Old.
I can't see Bo Scott or Ryan Hoffman being in the team in 2016.
It's unfortunate because they've been so well the last 4 or 5 years.
Hoffman, look, I think he played well in game 1 and game 2. He wasn't there for game 3. He did do a calf, so that sort of plays against him. But I'd be very tempted to see how his form is going into the back end of this season and early next year to see if he deserves a spot.
Yeah.
You can't just pick a team and stick with it. Hoffman, I think, may be a little bit past it. Bo Scott, certainly, I think he's going to move to Parramatta.
Moving to Parramatta next year doesn't seem like the best option, but he's obviously doing it for good reasons.
No, financial reasons, obviously, and also I think they'll probably approve of his gameplay. We've then got our lock, Paul Gallen. There's big question marks. There's question marks over whether he will be playing rep footy next year, whether he'll be wanting to lead New South Wales? What are your thoughts?
Well, look, there's question marks, and I mean, there's been question marks for years now because of his age, because of his injuries, but yet, still year on year, he comes in, does his job, and knows what he's doing. The thing that will stop me from dropping him is if you're going to be getting rid of your second rowers, or a couple of changes on the bench even, you're going to have some new blokes coming in. You need players like him, you need players like Robbie Farah, the experienced players that are there that can get him through and just basically give him an initiation into the game of Origin and show him how it's played and show him how hard it can be.
Yeah, I'm being a Sharks fan, it's hard to see Paul Gallen playing reps and then making sure he actually saves himself for next 2016 season as well.
Yeah, well, it's like I was speaking to you yesterday about it. Just a quick question I was asking to see if he was actually going to play this weekend or if he's going to be right for game one next year.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, that's the view of a lot of Sharks supporters. I know he's served the club well for a long time. And there's an argument there to say that he's probably one of our better players in the history, but the last 2 years, you almost want to take 50% off his pay. He's only played maybe 13 to 10 games a season for you. You've got to question, like obviously his heart's there for Cronulla.
Yeah.
He will bleed for the club.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's not playing enough games.
Yeah. Has he been given a contract yet?
Not that I'm aware of. I know there's been a lot of talk about a 1 year club contract extension.
Yeah.
There's an argument. I dare say that probably the club's probably pushing towards you need to make a commitment. If you want to get the 1 year, you probably want to
I think that
review your rep season.
I think that was the main thing that Flanagan come out and said the other week. That I mean, he wasn't speaking to Gal directly, but it was certainly pointed in his direction to say, look, if you want to be here, you're going to have to commit because we can't have you, like you said, playing 10, 12 games a year, but yet turn out for New South Wales year in, year out for 3 games.
Absolutely. Now, we then move on to the halves. We move back to the halves, I guess. Pearson, Hodkinson, thoughts?
Gone in my opinion. Like Hodgkinson, he's coming to Newcastle next year, which I think will be a good thing for him.
Probably ends his career.
Yeah, probably.
No, I think it could be a good thing for him. Hopefully he gets ownership off that team.
Yeah.
He can start to lead them around. There's too many people trying to pull the reins, I think, out Canterbury, whether it be him, Umbai, Reynolds, Graham, even when he's on the field. There's too many blokes trying to pull the reins. I think if he goes to Newcastle, he can dominate the team, make it his team, lead them the way he wants to play. He's got the mentality, he's got the game plan. Like we seen last year, I think Laurie Daly came out in the media and said he handed over all the video sessions to the halves.
Yeah.
So he understands how the game works. He understands how to build a game plan around his sort of game. So I think if he can do that and work well with Rick Stone next year, if Stone's still going to be there as the coach, but I think if he can do that and build that around himself, similar to what Johns did, I think Johns didn't really have a coach telling him too much what to do. He sort of relied on his own ability to be able to interpret the game or read a game. I think Hodkinson has that ability. He just really needs to aim up and start taking more control and more ownership of the team.
Yep. So you got Hodgkinson. Barring injury again, you'd have to think he'd be gone. For Adam Reynolds, I mean, you can see what the kid can do.
Yeah, I think Reynolds probably gets into the team for me. Where does your 5'8" play?
Well, your 5'8", you obviously like we talked about before. Pierce's record is just terrible. He seems to hit a bit of club form, and then we go, okay, well he must be good now. Let's bring him back in. And it hasn't worked. Like it's time to just move on from that experiment. You got three potential replacements, and each of them benefit each other. Like they play the way that they play, and that's the best thing for it. You got Matt Moylan, like we talked about before, who could slot into the wing spot or a bench spot. James Maloney, whose form this year hasn't been too bad, but you got the same situation as Pearce. You think if you're going to go back to him, it's hard to talk about. But him moving to the Sharkies next year, just depending on form, could be another thing. And you got this young kid, Blake Austin Powers. He's in scintillating form, and you'd have to think that he'd be a decent pick for next year just because of the fact he runs the ball. You want a 5'8" who can run a ball, and you can have Adam Reynolds in the other half just playing the position that he needs to play.
You don't see Kiri coming into the calculation as well?
Kiri's a tough one because of his
Defensive liability.
defensive liability and the fact that he said he didn't want to play for New South Wales.
Yeah, I think that also does it. But the thing with Laurie is he likes to go with combinations, or he said he likes to go with combinations, which could play into a factor there. But yeah, the only other one I could think of would be Brooks, but he'd have to find some red hot form and turn around. And also, obviously, he's having second year syndrome, which a lot of the rookies do in their second year. That's not to say he can't obviously turn around. That's not to say he's not playing good football.
Yeah.
He's just not playing the football that's seen him see a rookie of the year or accolade last year.
Yeah.
Whereas this year I think he's struggling, and teams are obviously finding him out, working him out, and obviously targeting him a little bit more.
Yeah, defensively as well, they like to hit the edges. Anybody that plays up against the Tigers, they like to hit the edges. You've got Mitch Moses as well, who's just poor in defence, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can see Brooks is obviously working on it, and exactly like you said, second year syndrome, it's just killing him at the moment. But yeah, like you said, he can come back and he should be able to.
Do you see any more bench players? I guess who could come onto the bench there?
Bench players, in my eyes,
I think maybe Mirren or Cordner come into the starting team, so that means maybe 1 or 2 spots there.
Yeah.
Jackson could come into the starting team for your second row.
Yeah, see, I'd have Jackson coming into the starting side just for that initial period. He's a tough player and he's able to work through it. I mean, he can play 80 minutes.
Yep.
You've also got Fafita, who I can't see why he hasn't been picked in the last 2 games. Like, honestly, it's really got me beat why he wasn't chosen, and you can see in the form that he's been playing for in the Sharks.
Yeah.
He's just absolutely dominating.
Well, that's what we were saying last night as well. I think if you can't go backwards now, New South Wales has got to look to the future. You've got guys like Lewis, Watmo, Scott now, Hoffman, Bird, potentially Gunn, maybe even Robbie Farah. You could drop all of that. There's an argument to say to let these guys go, let the new batch come through, and then we'll go from there. But I'd be reserved to maybe just let the maybe a few old heads stick around, let the young heads come through. Yep. You could be talking about a brand new halves pairing as well.
Yep.
You could be talking about brand new second rowers, maybe a few starting props.
Well, that's the thing, and that's why I was talking about coming back with Gallen and Farah needing to be there. If there's going to be that massive overhaul, they need the players there like that. Then you want players like your Josh Dugan, who's been phenomenal this series. He'll step up as well and just sort of show them the ropes.
Yeah, and you've also obviously got potentially the Morris brothers there, who've also served New South Wales for quite some time.
Plenty of time, yeah.
We're going to go to a song now, so we'll be back after this. Half an hour in already.
That's what I'm saying. Doesn't leave much time to cover off the rest.
That's all right. No big deal. You want to give it a call?
Hey?
You want to give it a call?
So what do I do? I'm just the tenor.
Yeah, just And welcome back. We're back live now with Ball Talk here with Joshua and Daniel Wood-Myers on 2BACR 100.9FM.
Oh, yeah.
We now move on to the Friday night recap. So, what were your thoughts on? So, I guess just to give me an update, I didn't watch too much. I watched a bit of the highlights this morning. Newcastle versus Canberra last night down in the warm capital. What was the scoreline there?
Well, if we're going to have a headline for the game, it would be Carnage in Canberra.
Oh, no.
Because
that is awful.
Oh, it was ridiculous. The game, I think it was probably about -4 degrees or something, nice and warm.
Oh, keeping it warm down in Canberra?
Yep.
Let's talk politics.
Oh, jeez. Lost my train of thought now, thanks.
No, you're right. Welcome. So I think the scoreline very much blew Newcastle out of the water early. I think it was 18-0 in 18 minutes. I think Austin was just showing why he should have been selected for New South Wales.
Blake Austin showing why he should have been selected. That's exactly right. 3 tries in 15 minutes.
Oof.
Absolutely dominated us. And it wasn't. It was hard to watch as a Newcastle supporter. Like it was just it was a hard game to watch in the sense that we had the ball down in their we had the ball in the opposition 20 and were tackled in the opposition 20. I think at the end of the game, within like 60 or 70 tackles, and just struggled with points. And the Raiders, we had enough ball, and the Raiders were. The Raiders were. They played excellent. There was nothing that we could do that would stop them from going forward, and it just dominated it.
Yeah, well, what was the final score?
36-22.
Fair enough. So there's quite a few points scored down there, which I guess goes towards where Canberra are at the moment. I think they're the top point scorers in the game. In the league at the moment, and obviously continuing that on. Where do you see Canberra going from here? Do you see them as a potential top 8? They could sneak into the top 8. I think they're sitting at the moment on 20 after last night's win, which puts them back in the logger jam with a lot of other teams.
Yeah, I'm going to about 4th place. I think you've got 20 points.
Yeah, so their for and against isn't dynamic, but where do you see them maybe potentially going on a run now? You've got Austin in career best form. You're starting to see Croker, I think, as well, play a little bit more of a role. Edric Lee was named 18th man, which probably helps give him a boost in confidence as well. Do you see them maybe creeping into the top 8, or do you think they're just too defensively weak?
Well, after last night's efforts, and Newcastle weren't throwing much at them, but like I said, the fact that they defended their line, and I tell you what, if they could play like they did last night, they're a definite top 8 contender.
Yeah.
Because they were just dominant in everything they did. The ball speed play, the tackling, they were moving up. They were just smashing us. There was nothing that we could do that would benefit them or that would benefit us.
Question marks over, I guess, their forward pack. I know Fenson's just a defensive demon. You've got Soliola, who's a good ball runner as well as a good defender.
Yeah, he had a late hit last night, which wasn't good, but.
See him as a suspension, or?
Nah, definitely not.
Nah, who's he hit on?
No, Roberts. He absolutely flattened him.
Oh, Jesus. So I think that's the second half forward that he's targeted this. I think he hammered Luke Brooks earlier in the year as well. Gave him a nightmare of running the ball to the line again. But yeah, Newcastle again. What's doing?
Well, there was
Gidley's farewell season,
mate. There was a situation for the second try for Blake Austin where he broke through the line. And Kirk Gidley Blake Austin put this massive left foot step on, absolutely just burned him.
Yeah.
And Kirk Gidley would look like he was still looking for the kick-off.
Gidley playing fullback last night.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how he can keep a bloke like Mamo or a bloke like Matautai or even Gagai. You can throw Gagai back there.
Well, that's the thing. Gagai slotted in when Gidley was in the halves and he did a decent job. You got Jake Mamo, who's just a superstar.
Oh, I don't know how he can leave him out of the team.
Well, that's the thing. It is the final year for Gidley.
He's holding down a spot which shouldn't be held down just because of his job there, his service to the club.
Obviously, his brother owning or CEO.
Yeah, I guess that plays a part, but it shouldn't really. And Stone needs to make the tough call. That's what he's paid to do.
Yeah.
He's there to make a tough call as a coach. And if it's not working, then you need to tap the bloke on the shoulder. And that's the harsh truth.
And that's the thing. And every time he touched the ball last night, I cringed. Like, he cringe every time he touches the ball now because he wants to try and do so well for the team. but it's just affecting the way he plays. That it becomes sloppy.
Yeah, which is a real shame because obviously he was a stalwart for the club, but it's looking more and more likely that he's probably stayed on the season too long. A bit like the old Ricky Ponting or like a Hindmarsh did with their careers.
Danny Medeiros.
Yeah, like one season too long, which is a real shame because it shouldn't be the way that a player like of his quality should be going out.
Yeah.
We then move on to the AFL. Did you happen to catch this one last night?
I didn't really watch too much of it, to be honest with you.
Bit of a dour game from what I could see off the scoreline. Very low scoring.
Yeah, it was 71 to 41. So I mean, there was rain down there in patches when I was watching it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Richmond did the job.
Yeah.
Carlton just obviously making sure that they keep their place on the table, which is down low.
Yeah.
Richmond, obviously, I think they've found a few wins in the trot now. Hoping to obviously secure an 8th spot or at least a top 8 team. They're hoping to avoid the ever the tragic 9th spot, which they've sort of been synonymous with over the years. So hopefully they obviously move on and make the top 8. They are a good team to watch when they are on fire, especially with Deledio and I think Ivan Maric, who was out last night, the big man, but I thought they're a good team to watch, especially with Rewald and stuff like that around the midfield, and they're a solid team. We're moving on, I guess, to today's game, so we'll go through the Saturday and Sunday preview. We've got the AFL where we've got Essendon versus Melbourne, that's today. Western Bulldogs versus the Gold Coast, which is also today. North Melbourne versus Geelong, which is today. Which out of those three do you see as the better game to watch for our listeners?
The better game to watch in my eyes would be the Western Bulldogs and Gold Coast Suns.
Yep. So
very, very different levels on the ladder, where you've got the Dogs sitting at 7th and Gold Coast down 17th, but it's still going to be a scintillating game.
Yeah, well, I think the main factor that probably comes into that would be the big man Gary Ablett coming back last week, who obviously made an instant impact where they beat, I think it was North Melbourne off the top of my head last week, adding frustrations to the North Melbourne fans. But I think Gary Ablett coming back is a real boost, not only with what he does on the ball, but also just having him there for such a young team. To have a leader like Gary on the field, it makes you play that extra 10% better, which could really make the Dogs vulnerable. I think the thing that goes towards the Dogs' side would probably be that it's down in Melbourne. It's not in the Gold Coast, which does makes them a little bit more playable on their home track.
Yep.
But it wouldn't surprise me if Gold Coast obviously do spring a bit of an attack here, and obviously surprise the Dogs at home. I think the Dogs, having now seen what they're like or what they're capable of doing last week against North Melbourne, they'd be ready for it. Or you'd hope they'd be ready for it at least, and they'd be up for the game. You can't question Mark, obviously. I think had it have been without Gary Ablett, you could have maybe just gone through the motions a little bit and just gone through what you're actually doing as part of the game. But with Gary there, you've really got to be on your game, otherwise you're going to lose the 4 points and you could make yourself vulnerable again. You said that the Western Bulldogs are sitting in 7th. They need to make sure that they keep winning games.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. With Gary Ablett coming back last week, it helped the Suns so much. I mean, he only got 3 goals, which isn't a major factor, but he had 31 disposals, which any time that Ablett has the ball in his hands, it's just a thing to watch.
Yeah.
The Suns last week got 125 points, which is massive, but it is their biggest score during the whole year, and it come from the back of Ablett being there. Yeah. You also had Charlie Dixon, who got 7 goals.
Bag 7, yeah.
So 44 points there, which is a club record for the Suns.
Yep.
So if he hasn't been in form too much at late, Dixon, but he is playing for a contract basically, and he will be in demand. Yeah,
exactly right. Well, he's a big tall forward who's also versatile. I think he moves up and down the ground as well. I think the Suns played in there last year and moved him as a ruck rover as well. So he does have the ability to go up and down the ground. He also played defence. I think when they first came into the comp, he was sort of like he was either a forward or a back, and they were umming and ahhing about whether they were going to play him, but they eventually moved him into the forward line, and that's where they've kept him. We'll then move on to the Sunday games. We'll breeze through these. Actually, I missed one of the Saturday games, West Coast versus Adelaide, which it's going to be interesting to see how Adelaide back up after the loss of their coach.
It'll be a heartfelt match. I think it was Port and Collingwood on Thursday night, and at the end of the match, the Port boys who won by 3 points, they were in tears because I think he used to be an assistant coach there.
Yeah, potentially.
So the fact that they were able to still play on and win, it's going to be a major factor in Adelaide for Adelaide to just go out and just want to do the right thing.
It could really go. It could be a real flogging as well. I hate to be the negative Nancy in the room, but it's over at West Coast. West Coast are playing some good footy.
Yep.
Adelaide's heads, which you can be understanding, could maybe not be in the game. This could really get ugly, and that's a part of footy, I guess. But you really got to feel for the Adelaide boys.
Yeah.
We move on to the Sunday games. We've got GWS versus St Kilda, Brisbane versus Sydney, and then obviously the big one, Hawks versus Freo.
Yeah, you got the heavyweight showdown.
Yeah, I think Hawks versus the grand final rematch from last year. Freo's form line going into this game, had you have asked me who was going to win this game 3-4 weeks ago, you'd be saying Freo. Freo maybe looked a bit vulnerable, particularly against Collingwood last week, where they lost the lead going into the fourth quarter and had to fight their way back, which is, I guess, a credit to them. But I just don't know if Hawks are going to get beaten by Freo down in Melbourne. There's probably going to be still some mental demons down there after the grand final. They've got no Crowley, obviously, due to the suspension for doping and stuff like that. But I just don't know if Freo are going to be able to make sure that they can hold Hawthorn to the amount of points that they need to be able to outscore them in the game.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You've got Hawthorn, who are the best attacking team this season, averaging over 100 points. And then, so you got first versus fourth in Hawthorn being fourth and Fremantle first. So, I mean, Fremantle are top of the ladder with 2 games clear, which is massive. So they can afford to have a loss here, but you wouldn't, like, being in that situation, you wouldn't want to be like that. You got the lead, and like Fremantle are the league's best in defence. Yeah. Like they're conceding average 60 points, and that's like it's...
Which is what Ross Lyon has sort of built them on, but I just don't know if your best defensive team against your best attacking team. I can see Hawks really getting away with it. Maybe probably over between the 1 to 39 margin would be where I was going.
Yeah, well, I'm going Hawks by 32.
Yeah, well there you go. We'll now move on. So Brisbane versus Sydney. Any real thoughts on that one? Sydney look probably like they're going to give it to Brisbane.
I think you'll see them dominate with Brisbane being last on the ladder.
I think you could see maybe Sydney break out in the first half and then maybe just take the foot off the pedal.
Sit back a bit.
Yeah, which is what they've done with, I think, a lot of the lower opposition. They don't really go after the percentage points, which is fair enough. They're happy just to make sure that their players are fit and obviously still finding the footy. Just give them a run around and maybe obviously nullify any real scoring ability for the other team, and just maybe work on their formations and work on their
different
technique.
Combinations with different players.
Exactly right. So obviously they'll bode them well going into the back end of the season.
That's it.
Moving on to the NRL, we've got Penrith versus the Roosters, which should be a cracking game, and we've also got Bulldogs versus the Broncos, both Saturday games. So how do you see these ones going?
Both Saturday games. You've got Panthers sitting in 10th with Roosters 3rd. 22 points to 18 points is the ladder positions. You got, in my eyes, you got two massive matchups in this. You got the 2 fullbacks, DWZ, Dylan Lesniak, versus RTS, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck.
Oh.
So besides both of their names, which are terribly difficult, both of them are they're both young prospects of fullback position. I mean, DWZ last week showed why he can be a fullback, and he's dominated in that position.
Even against the Tigers, I thought he really stood up in that second half and got him over the line for the Penrith team. So he's finding a bit of form at the back, and obviously more than once fit does come back into the team. But really, Zelezniak is putting his hand up to make sure that if Moylan does obviously fall when he comes back, or if he starts losing a bit of form, it's easy to put Zelezniak back there.
That's exactly right.
Which is good. It's good for the Penrith team. It gets Moylan hungry and makes sure that he's not just thinking his position safe. Obviously makes him want to play his best footy, and that's obviously a good thing for Penrith. Dogs versus Broncos. Where do you see that one at?
It'll be a tough one, I think, because you got your Dogs in 8th. with Broncos up at the top of the ladder.
Broncos were, I think, the more expensive team on the tab from what I've seen as well, which is a bit of a surprise for me. I don't know how you can put a team that's coming first against a team that's coming eighth.
I think it's down in Sydney, which is a massive thing for the Dogs. The game has got the highest number of Origin players backing up with your Corey Parkers and Justin Hodges is out. He's being rested.
Yep, so you've got Parker, Gillette, Boyd, who else was
Sammy.
Friday. You then got Jackson, Morris,
Clemmer.
So there's quite a number of blokes backing up, but even with that is also Gillette. Sorry, mate, if you are listening. I didn't mean to leave you out there, but you've also got. I don't understand how the bookies can have Broncos who are sitting top of the table as outsiders. I know it's down in Sydney, but I really think Wayne Bennett, if he wants to make sure that his team are actually going to have a real go at this premiership this year, he wants to make a point down here in Sydney. And that is beating a team that could be a potential top 8 team, making a real effort. And I think that's why he kept Parker on board, he kept Friday on board. I was speaking to a mate at work, Josh, who was informing me about who the Broncos play over the next week. I think they play Tigers next week, and I think they play Titans the week after.
Two fairly easy games. So you think you should roll over and rest a couple of players.
Exactly. You tell your blokes like Parker and Friday, look, boys, I know a big one from you this week. Will be two games clear, which I think they are at the moment, or maybe one game clear at the moment. With that said, you can maybe get a breather. You can maybe have a week off against the Tigers.
Well,
a week off against the Tigers.
That's the thing. I mean, you look at Wayne Bennett, and I mean, he's done so well for Brisbane. Always during these Origin periods. It's a shame that he didn't do too much for Newcastle, but we'll let that one go. He manages these players so well in that situation where they're sitting top of the ladder. They haven't, like normally the Brisbane, they sort of drop off during that time over the Origin period, but he's managed them so well this year that I think they've just trotted on, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and I guess your winners out of those two?
You got the Penrith by 8 points in my eyes, and I'm going to go to the Dogs with an upset by 4.
Oh, I'm not really an upset, I think, if you're a bookie. And then obviously we've got that by 4. Moving on to the Sunday games, we've got Warriors versus Storm and Sharks versus Dragons. Warriors versus Storm over the ditch, as they like to say. Conrad Terrell out would probably be the main out for the Kiwis. Sean Johnson in some really red hot form.
Yeah, well, coming off the bye this week with Sean Johnson, he
has the bye come at the wrong time for the Warriors?
I think so. It comes down to the inconsistency of most of the Warriors players in situations like this. Like the form that he's been in the week before, prior to this bye, has been like scintillating. Like he's been untouchable. Anything he touches turns to gold. I think the rest, it has come at a wrong time for him because, unfortunately, I feel as though he'll struggle. And it is over in New Zealand, which will be a big plus for him. But I can see him just sort of struggling that little bit just because of that break.
Yeah, and also you've also got Cam Smith, Cooper Cronk backing up after Origin. Cooper Cronk in red hot form. Again, the knee seemed to hold up well on Wednesday night, although he probably didn't have to do too much. But and obviously Cam Smith's put that issue behind. I think he's coming out as well doing an interview with Fox Sports as well around.
No, he's declined that now. It was yesterday come out that he was going to do an interview, and probably 3 or 4 hours later he said no.
No, I think that's probably for the best. I think he doesn't need that to say.
Well, that's the thing.
He puts himself in a real dangerous position if he's coming out in the media and saying something. And then obviously you then get your online trolls who just go, oh, well, he meant it like this, he meant it like that, he didn't have to say this, he didn't have to say that. And then obviously you've got the Alex McKinnon bandwagon.
The backflip on that, I think, has come from Craig Bellamy.
Oh, he doesn't need to put
himself... And that's exactly right. He doesn't need to put him in that position. He doesn't need to put the team in that position where they're going to be scrutinised for something that's...
Exactly right. It's done and dusted. Let's move on. I think that's the healthy. Alex has had his say. Let's move on.
Cam Smith, after he's retired, he'll bring out a book. So.
Oh, exactly right. Yeah, Smithy, certainly like Smithy in Storm or Storm Smithy or something like that. Where do you see the Sharks versus Dragons going? Dragons obviously pumped the Sharks last time.
Demolished them.
It was absolutely awful to watch on a Sunday afternoon. Bit embarrassing, but obviously there's a lot of outs for the Dragons.
Well, and that's the thing. The Dragons demolished them last game, 42-6, and that was in round 12. That's actually the Dragons' last win.
Oh yeah, that's right. They've gone on a 4-match or 3-match losing streak now.
I think it's a 4. So we're in round 18 now.
Yeah,
so they had the bye.
So Sharks could be obviously adding more woes to the crosstown rivals, which would be great for all Sharks fans out there. They'd love to just put it over the Dragons, but do you think that the Sharks have the ability to be able to do that? Because I know the Dragons obviously have lost 4 in a row, but they've been close. They've been close, and they've also got a lot of injuries. They've got a few coming back this week. Not all, but Joel Thompson's back.
Yeah, Joel Thompson comes back.
Which will steal them up in the middle. Merrin's suspension comes at a bad time.
4 weeks, and that's what's going to hurt him the most. You've also got Dugan, who's potentially going to be out, just because he might be. I think he had a niggling injury at the end of the game.
Yeah, so that Red V wall that was there at the start of the season seems to be a little bit frail at the moment. But I just don't know if the Sharks can take advantage of that.
Well, the Sharks are going to have to, because if they want to break into that 8 spot. They're, like we said before, they're on 18 points, which there's a whole abundance of them on 18 points. I mean, the Sharks are sitting in 11th, Dragons are in 4th on 20 points, so there's 2 points there within 6 or 7 spots. Like, if the Sharks want to be in that top 8, they need to win today, and they need to show that they can win. Yeah. Obviously, Fafita has been in fine form. There's been talk that Gallen's obviously going to be back, which he should be. But, I mean, the thing is that every time Gallen comes back, it seems like Fafita sort of takes a step back.
Yeah, which is a shame, because they should both be really leading the club. I don't think Fafita should stop being a leader just when Gallen's in, and I don't think Gal should be the dominant force. Although sometimes you can have a few too many touches, I found. But there's an argument out there at the moment which says Gal should be out of the Origin team because he tries to do everything. And that then obviously brings down the balance as far as the team's concerned. Where do you see the Warriors and Sharks... Warriors Storm and Sharks Dragons? Where do you see the points going to there?
I'm going to go the Storm. I think with Cam Smith, obviously he played fairly well on Wednesday. Him coming back into the side, I'm going to go Storm by 12.
By 12, too?
Yeah. I don't know what it is over there, but with Conrad Hurrell out, I think they'll struggle to score the points.
Yeah.
Sharkies and Dragons. I'm going to go the upset with the Sharkies. Just the fact that
give me that news.
The fact that the Dragons have got Dugan out. I mean, potentially out. The Dragons they struggle to score points.
Yep.
They've got the least amount of tries, the least amount of line breaks for the year. I mean, I know they're sitting up in 4th, and they're defensively they're well, but I think the Sharks will just run over them.
And Titans versus Manly. Let's make this one quick. What was the scoreline for that one?
Sharkies by 12.
By 12, jeez.
Giving them a go.
Oh, since 13, under 13s there. And Titans versus Manly.
Titans versus Manly, it should be a clear cut for Manly, you'd think.
Manly, DCA obviously, hopefully the 10 to 12 fans out there from Gold Coast really give it to him. Leading knows in Gold Coast. Just absolutely hurl abuse at him.
Give him a good 10-second abuse and then the game's over.
Yeah, maybe grab a meat pie and chuck it at him. I don't know, there's not going to be too much going on at Gold Coast. They struggle to get a crowd, but you'd hope on a Monday night they really show up and just hurl something at him, just abuse, just give him something.
I think that could be the only reason they'd get a record crowd there,
Yeah, exactly right. Well, if they can't show up to give DCA some, then don't bother. Titans, just with a lot of injuries at the moment, Manly seeming to find a little bit more form. They beat the Sharks pretty convincingly last week out of Brookie.
Yeah, that's it. Manly's games before that, they've always been in the mix, and it has been against the top sides, as you could say, with Manly sitting down low. They've always been in that mix, and a couple of tight losses, it hasn't helped, but...
I don't see this one being a thrashing, if I'm honest. I can't see it being a 13 plus. I think it'd probably be a 1 to 12. I think Titans could surprise a few people and keep close. I just don't know. The Manly forward package is still so easy to beat. Like, even looking at Ryan James and Nate Miles, and I think there's a few other big boppers there for the Titans, they could really take it to the Manly and obviously help them maintain a close game. But I think Cherry Evans, Foran, Lyon, Maddie, Stewart, the old names that have been at Manly for so long, they've got enough class to get them over the line. But yeah. I wouldn't be putting much on a 13 plus yourself.
Well, I'm going for a massive 13 plus. I'm going to go Manly with 22.
By 22?
I think they were just dominated. Like you just said, the old names that you talked about, that would just be too classy for them.
Alright, well, we're going to go quickly to a song. I know we're running over at the moment, but we're going to come back after a break and then we'll quickly go through something. We're going to go through the actions just quickly and sign off on the Tour de France as well for our more diverse listeners. But we're going to go to a quick song here and we will be right back. How you going, mate?
Good.
Are you on next?
Yeah.
Sorry, we're cutting you off, eh?
Yeah.
But
Sorry about that.
let's cut this off. And we're back live. Sorry, we've had to cut that song short, listeners. So we're done for the day. We've got someone else coming in after us, which we weren't aware of. So we do apologise for that. We're going to throw to a bit of a song now. Just going to throw it to the auto cue, and we're done for the week. So thank you for listening in, Josh.
Thanks for all the listeners once again. Hopefully we'll listen to you again next week. Hopefully, thanks again.
And we're done for the week. So have a good weekend. Thank you very much.
Sorry to rush you.
No, sorry, mate. The last few weeks we've had no one after us.
Ah, okay.
So we had no idea. No one told us that you were on after us.
Oh, right, okay. That's right. Yeah, I've actually been away for the last 2 weeks. So
Well, there you go. Yeah, we've only been on the last week.
Ah, okay.
I've been doing
Well,
we're all good. Did you need headphones?
I've got mine.
Too easy. I'll get it anyway. Yeah.